Guys, welcome to another Founder Wisdom podcast, AI edition. Today with James Longbottom. He is director at Pro AI. He's also an AI consultant. We're going to talk about a whole bunch of array of AI topics. It's going to be interesting. Had a quick chat with James yesterday. He's a cool guy, laid back and tons of experience in AI. So, James, welcome to the pod. Can you tell us a bit more about yourself and tell us a bit more about Pro AI?
Yeah, sure. Thank you very much for having me on. So I'm based in London. The company Pro AI is really about trying to give bespoke solutions to people. I started the company with the site that there's a lot of systems out there with AI. There's a lot of SaaS systems and platforms that people can access, but I really want to give consultation information to people, and in that kind of provide bespoke systems, because I think that's where a lot of benefit can lie, especially with business.
Right. My feedback was that AI consultancy businesses and AI agencies in the past couple of years they didn't have a real use case, or people thought that AI was still very much far-fetched and didn't see the utility. While we've seen pretty much breakthroughs in 2009-ish with I believe it's called AlexNet, right? The image identification platform with ML and all of that. So we started seeing that pretty game-changing stuff around 2019. It didn't flew under most common folks or entrepreneurs' radar. But am I right in saying that like most people didn't think that there were a use case, and nowadays with ChatGPT, there's kind of an explosion in a request of working with AI?
Exactly. Yeah, I think like GPT-4 is the background, right? That's the kind of brain that. But the Chat GPT is very good because it gives a user interface that people are used to. We're used to that kind of, you give me something and I get something back, like a chat or like a text message, something like that. So it just breaks that barrier to what the solution is. And don't get me wrong, there are lots of platforms and solutions out there that do that and kind of demonstrate well what their solution is. But like you said, I think recently, that Chat GPT window has enlightened a lot of people in terms of what is possible. And then because everyone can access it, people are talking about it more. It just breaks that barrier where, like before, when I was a consultant, there was a lot of kind of talk about black box and things being kind of sealed up and you didn't know what they kind of did. But now it's explainable more, and people can use it a lot more easily. So yeah, I think we're moving in the right direction, to answer your question. Yeah.
The black box thing is still very much a hot topic of discussion, because my understanding is that our human brains are not advanced enough to understand what's that machine's output, and would be nice to have the machine explain it as well. I think that that could be a somewhat easy low-hanging fruit solution to all of that, so that we can also develop innovation on these breakthroughs. What do you think about the black box problem, and how can we solve it, and why is it important also to solve it?
I think it's important to solve in certain aspects because there is a benefit of knowing what's going on. I mean, humans always want to have control of what they own, right? They want a kind of ability to know what's going on in the background. Unfortunately, there's a big influx with computational power around deep learning, and you've got to just let that thing kind of go because that's where the benefits are. I mean, the way that ChatGPT does it is you have initially when they would train this thing, they would create they would have questions, it would answer those questions. A labeler would then come in and label those four answers. Well, I'm just simplifying things, but let's say A, B, C, and D. That then would go into a reward model. And that reward model would then say A is the best answer, D is the worst. And you just repetitively rework it like that. Now, the black box thing really is not in the reward model, because we can explain that. It goes down to the kind of the intricacies of that labeler, which you can program yourself. For example, you could make a version of ChatGPT where you tell it exactly how you do that labeling. Why is that first response that this model gave better than the other one? And that could explain it. But I think we're especially with ChatGPT, it's important to understand that the benefit really comes when this thing is organic itself. So, like I said, in some situations, there's a lot of benefit for it. In others, not so much. Of course, when you're talking about ethical solutions where people can be hurt in the process of these systems. We've had a lot of kind of our systems that put out racist kind of outputs. You need to explain why that's the case. But yeah, I agree. I'm on the kind of side where I think that black box has its part, where I know a lot of consultants which explainable AI is a big part of their message and really important for them. So it depends where you fall on that side of the fence, I suppose.
What about their human brains not being as quick and the innovations we could miss out from just not understanding what's happening inside, and how did GPT get to this answer? How fundamental is that for humanity's progress?
Yeah, exactly. I think if I read the BBC quite a bit, and on there there's lots of articles about we need to stop AI for 6 months, and we need to, obviously I'm quite biased, but there's a lot of news articles trying to put up the warnings around these kind of topics. That's because people don't understand what the concepts of them are, and I understand that. A lot of the machines are generating content, and we don't know what's behind there, or how they're managing to do that. But like you mentioned, to really get the benefits from it, most of the benefits we've seen that progress the topic are in deep learning. Like, for example, AlphaGo was a prime example of that. That is very much a black box. It was doing moves. Are you aware of AlphaGo?
Yeah, it was
You are,
incredible.
yeah, absolutely incredible. Yeah, so that was playing the game Go, which was like a board game. You didn't know why it made those answers, and you had to study a lot to sorry, the moves. They had to study a lot to understand why it made those moves, but you still let it make the moves in the first place. I think that's the important way to do things. You need to push the boundaries of where this technology is going, so it does benefit humanity. Like I said, there's nothing scary about what's in ChatGPT at the moment because it's just a chat interface, but the implications of it can be vast. As long as you can balance that cost and that the benefit and the cost of it is important.
Right. And why are people so scared then? Because the author of the letter is Max Tegmark, which is not, a novice in that field. He's a physicist. He's written various books on the topic, and probably 60% of his Future of Life Institute is based off AI. So, and he has a bunch of prominent folks. So, is it like a psychological reaction that this guy had? Is he just scared?
No.
Is he like at a phase of his life in which he has a lot of stress and just kind of puts that on the world? Why did he came up with the letter then?
He seems to make a lot of money off his books. I hope he's not too stressed. I mean, but I read Live 4.0. Have you read that book?
Yeah, I read them all, and his first book was also very good. I think it was the mathematical nature of our universe or something like that. That was one of my favorites.
Yeah, yeah. Well, in one of his books, he talks about Prometheus, a system called Prometheus, and it's kind of a story of. It starts off in this Faraday cage where these I can't remember what they call them, but these secret developers are making this AI system in the background.
Right.
And obviously, it goes on to fire all the nuclear codes, and it's very kind of end of the world apocalyptic kind of stuff.
Right.
Don't get me wrong, that could be a kind of one way of looking at things, and smart people and me like Elon Musk are kind of pushing that kind of rhetoric where that could be a problem. Is there lots of different ways this could go? If I wrote a book, I might write it a little bit differently to Max Tegmark did in Life 4.0. But that is a possibility. I think humanity are very good at doing this. We make the car and then we make the seatbelt. With AI, you can't do that. You have to get precautions in place, and I'm all behind that. But like you said, you need to balance it so that we're still getting benefits that can impact humanity in a positive way.
Right. I don't think it's gonna wipe out like humanity one shot. I do think that some people are gonna abuse of the technology. The argument that it is a fundamentally different technology and that it can end life in one um, one clap. I don't think that is sensible. There's been a lot of people arguing against it lately. Yeah, I'm all about the speed and the exponentiality of it, but there's also limits to that. So I do think that, yeah, like you said, humanity, it puts the carriage in front of the horses, kind of. That's how we learn, right? Like as children,
Absolutely.
we fall on our ass, we get up and we keep on. We hit a wall. Oh, okay, this is hard. This hurts. Um, and if that's the nature of technology, that it will progress so fast that it will wipe us out, well, I do think there's a probability of that, but I think it's is way smaller. As per the book in itself, and I've been following the recent back and forth on Twitter between LeCun and Tegmark and the other guy that is like he's like the chief AI doomer. I forgot what his name was. I think he's from Israel. Forgot the name, but anyway, they're going like at it hard back and forth. And well, LeCun is also pretty much extreme, so it all shows like the humanity of the thing. These guys, they have a white coat, they're scientists, but in the end they're very vulnerable and irrational human beings too. I like that the fact that it's a public debate as well. That's exactly what needs to happen. But yeah, the book in itself, it was quite good. I even think that it helped like start OpenAI, or it was like almost at the same time, because it excited me. The scenario was like, oh, that's gonna be the next business I'm gonna build. Very dystopian, cool fiction, nice bedtime reading, but I don't think there's much rationality to it. And Max Tegmark, he keeps on bringing back the movie, what's it called again? Don't Look Up, with Leonardo DiCaprio.
Yeah, yeah,
Um,
absolutely. Yeah, in the world,
and
yeah.
yeah, and that movie is like it was pretty much based off COVID and for political reasons, and with all the Trump stuff happening, it wasn't really based off AI, and also just basing your whole argument. I mean, it's not basing your whole argument. I think he used this analogy just to make people understand quickly what's about to happen, or what he thinks is about to happen. But I find it a bit odd, and every time people tend to reason on a past work of fiction, which the AI folks tend to do a lot, I'm like, okay, this is odd. This is not really scientific. This is not how you should reason. It's like folks in my industry looking at the movie Wolf of Wall Street as an example to found a business. Well, dude, this is a complete fiction. First, that what he did was not ethical and so forth. And this has been created by Hollywood people. And I've been talking about the dangers of the Hollywood culture for quite a while now. I think it really much corrupts our industry, just like porn does. It's just like these people that play on our serotonin systems, and it's not really rational at all. So I'm kind of sour with that a little bit. You can't reason off Hollywood. It's probably the worst thing to do, right? What do you think about that?
You know, yeah, I think that they make money out of making situations more interesting. The same in the news. And don't be wrong, I mentioned the
Right.
BBC putting these stories up, going, let's support it. But everyone's got a different point of view. It's just whatever starts the loudest, really, doesn't it? So in doing what I do, I do talk to people who have rational views about these kind of things. Not everyone's kind of beating this drum of Armageddon's around coming tomorrow. Yeah, I just think, I agree with you. But if I was playing devil's advocate, companies are closed boxes in terms of what they're able to do. So
Right.
we don't know what other people are doing.
Right.
This ChatGPT is is open. There's probably lots of things they're doing in the background which are a lot more impressive, and there's lots of other
100%.
companies that are getting on this boat. So if eventually something will come out that's more impressive than this, obviously.
Yeah.
And it's how we deal with that, isn't it?
No, I fully agree with that. Like the good thing about Tegmark is that he's opening the convo. Same for Elon. I just think that humans should be better at recognizing their biases, right? So the Hollywood bias we just named, another very fat and big one that you put your finger on is the capitalist one, which is that we've lived so long in this capitalist system that we forgot that we're biased on money. So Max Tegmark, obviously, that he's happy to go on these podcasts and have more of his books sold and more of the speaking gigs. Although he does care about humanity, I do think that's a strong motivator. of the conversation. People also need to acknowledge their own cortisol bias. So like obviously maybe he's stressed out human being. Elon Musk, like we all know that his cortisol is through the roof through managing an insane amount of companies at the same time and facing humongous mountains of stress every day. It's obvious that his brain will go in the stressful direction. And I think that
Yeah.
these folks as public figures, they have responsibilities, and especially important that they get to face their bias and expose these bias to society if they are that transparent. And regarding what you just said, these companies competing against one another, well, yeah, talking back about Musk, one of my strong disappointment was that he called, the letter to stop AI for 6 months. And that seems to be kind of a dishonest move. It's like, give me time to catch up. I'm looking for my breath here. And then he starts his own company, so just a bit more honesty, especially if you're a public figure, especially if these AI are going to pick up on your personality and are going to learn from like these public figures. I think it's just important that they put it all up front. But the good thing is that they open the dialogue, these guys, and that just like, yeah, has its own very strong weight and make me respect these individuals. I think that's kind of the bottom line. What do you think will happen in this AI race? Like, do you think OpenAI, they've been putting on the brakes, right? For many, many reasons, for ethical reasons, for legal reasons, for PR reasons. Who do you think will win the race? Well, I mean, you can't win the race like at once, but you can be at the head of the pack. Do you think OpenAI will keep up with this advantage? Where do you think the company will be at like 5 to 10 years?
I think obviously when Google and Microsoft get involved with it more, the gaps will close down until these kind of systems become ubiquitous through society. And then I think it almost becomes impossible to kind of predict. I think you'll get spikes like we did with OpenAI, where because the amount of computational power they have accessible, they can train things very, very, very quickly, and that's getting faster and faster over time. In terms of well, they're just getting faster developing systems. So with that, once these systems spread out, then there'll be spikes and new systems come out that will be, kind of big differences, I think. So, and that might be different plays that we're not touching on yet. People, like I said, people might be doing this in the background. I think what's impressive about ChatGPT is that, because it's getting 10, 15 million users a day, they're retraining with that every day as well.
Right.
And that's where the exponential kind of growth is in positive responses.
Right.
Or GPT-5 could do more things further on down the line. So access to it's important at this point, but like I said, I can see where these kind of systems become more ingrained naturally in society. Well, that's what Microsoft is doing, right? They're embedding into their systems already, like Excel and Word.
Yeah.
So it's a difficult one to guess, I think.
Yeah, I think, I call these like one-way doors vs revolving doors. A one-way door, for example, historically, if we look at other fields than just business, is us humans taking over the planet, right? That's a one-way door. You can't go back. We just like dominate everything, and it's impossible for these other creatures to compete. That is if they're not alien creatures, right? Because I believe in UFOs, and I do think that they're already with us. They just don't intervene, just like an AGI wouldn't intervene. By the way, that's one of my strong theories amongst many. If we look at, and yeah, like us humans, like we have exterminated stuff. And if we look no further than the Holocaust, we're capable of exterminating stuff at mass. We have this horrible evil nature in us. And yes, the AI could certainly pick up on that. And yeah, there's genocides happening on a daily basis. There's really mean and evil people out there that are just killed for fun, so like the AI could certainly pick on that. But the point I was trying to make is, like, if we bring this back to business and OpenAI not allowing other competitors to come in, yeah, could be. Historically, did we have that? No. Is it because we have regulations in place and like antitrust actions brought against Microsoft, for example, and we were trying to break up monopolies? I don't think so. I think these systems are mostly useless. I think it's just the natural cycle of things. like Bill Gates, doesn't have the same energy as his young self, and he will naturally give up to younger, more fit competitors. But will that change with eternal life and longevity? That's a good question. And then I also think that modern companies, their default state is sharing, kind of. Do they do that for evolutionary purposes? Maybe. Do they do that for good purposes? Also, maybe, like Google allowing employees to work on their own projects, OpenAI being open source and so forth. The open source mindset is really strong in Silicon Valley. Do some individuals try to abuse of that, like Musk open sourcing Twitter but booting Substack off its platform? Yes. So it's like compete and cooperate at the same time. I think both can coexist. But I do think we have this factor. I do think that OpenAI, if they start dominating, they will open source and have the plugins, and other actors will be able to pick up on that and compete in the same ecosystem. I don't think one big business will be in total charge. But if I would ask the same question to Sam Altman, for example, I don't think he'd agree, because he's setting up WorldCoin right now, when AGI will create so much wealth that UBI will have to be the only solution. Well, it's one of his many solutions, I think. But yeah, what you're saying is clearly possible. There's just so hard to make predictions, right?
Absolutely. Well, I think we get involved with a lot of founding. People get involved with founding from other sources, and AI is getting integrated a lot into that. It's becoming more part of the question because it's becoming more accessible and more understandable. So I think that being an underlying thing will change our lives in quite a big way in the short term as well. Systems coming in that have it in the background. I think you don't need to know that AI is there, but they're doing things that are intelligent, that go under the bubble of AI. I'm already, very aware of the increase in people that are getting this kind of technology built into their existing platforms, or platforms trying to get funding for. It's becoming more part of and people are wanting to invest in this because there's a huge, maybe there's a gap in what it can really do and how many people are investing in it. Maybe that's the case, but there's a serious amount of money going into it, and it has been for a long time. The government's invested, especially in the UK, invested a lot of money and resources into making sure that it's involved in this kind of topic.
Yeah.
I just think that from a business point of view, it needs to get adopted more. And I'm not talking about, we've talked about some quite extreme kind of topics, but simple kind of solutions that have been working for a long time, kind of, that raises the floor by a little bit. And if you do that with a lot of companies, that makes people more efficient. And I think that's where ProAI certainly comes in, trying to add efficiency, because people have a lot of stresses with the businesses in terms of the energy crisis we've got at the moment. Global warming is becoming more of an issue, especially to kind of food producers. There's lots of stresses and strains on different companies. So adding efficiency is a real world problem that needs solving. And I think the more we can do that with very simple and even cost effective solutions from artificial intelligence, that's how we kind of mediate those kind of things. But yeah, it trickles down from these very complicated systems to usable platforms, doesn't it? And people get very good at making those platforms. But yeah, I think from my point of view, that the main benefit is giving more access to these kind of systems, all these kind of algorithms, because they can really enhance things in a lot of ways.
Yeah, I tend to go on the more positive side of things. I analyze human nature, history, and the laws of evolution quite a lot. When billionaires make it at the top, like most of them, that was like my past podcast, they want to give, right? Oh, I've made it. I've proved it to myself. I'm like apex predator. Now I'm giving back. Obviously, that's a human thing. Us humans, we anthropomorphize pretty much everything. Like a shark wouldn't do that, right? Like, I became top of the food chain. Now I'm gonna be nicer. Or, but us, most billionaires do that 80%. Now, is it for ego reason? Whatever the reason, I think that people that make it at the top tend to do good, unless they're like deeply psychologically ill. But seems like that's ingrained in us and in our veins, kind of. So I do think that these people will want to share, people that really make it at the top, like Sam Altman. And I view something positive from that. And fortunately, AGIs will pick up on that and will make something nice for for society. I think, like, ironically, us alphas, we compete, but we also cooperate, right? So we like competing. It motivates us to do more, but we also love to cooperate because there's advantages in cooperating as well. Yesterday I was listening to a pod, and they were quite very much weighing on the aspect that us humans, we were back in the days killing machine, and we were very much like win-lose type of folks. I think this is changing. Is it like natural from a consciousness perspective that we're getting like more win-win? Is it just abundance, right? With abundance in our society, are we like getting better? People could argue about that, but when people say that there's trolls, haters out there, people that are really like lose type of peoples, I'm not talking about alphas there. This is like really the bottom of society. That in a natural context, these folks, they wouldn't be there. If we would be by the laws of natures, these lose folks, normally they don't survive. They're really the weakest, and they try, just like buckets, crabs in buckets, they try to drag people down with them, right? But I think that top people, which is people that influence our world, by the way, I don't think that like trolls and haters do influence the course of history. I think that top people are trying better to do good. And yeah, that's my main thesis right now. And a bunch of people could poke holes in that one, but I have lots of faith in that one.
Well, I suppose there's more people in the. If you're on the top echelon, what you spoke about, there's more spotlight on you, isn't there? And that kind of drives good behaviour. Hopefully, that's
Right.
what I think the point of kind of news and media should be, to kind of highlight people.
But you get so much hate at the top,
Yeah,
The media is always trying to go for your throat, which is the cortisol I was talking about with Elon. It must be, well, he adapted, right? But he has so many trolls and haters. Like even me recently with Elon, he's always been a guide for me. And recently I found his open letter 6 months move quite dishonest. I also found his trying to boot Substack off the platform also dishonest, and my confidence in him kind of waived. And for a guy like me, that's important because he's like one of my top 5 or 10 examples in this life. I've always relied on him, and they get the spotlight, but mostly in a negative way. Crabs in the bucket, kind of. Journalists are trying to drag him down. Even myself is like, yeah, dude, you're this dishonest type of guy, So I think they adapt, but they do get a lot of hate. Yeah, right. So to your point, kind of, they do adapt.
He's a polarizing figure, isn't he? And
Yeah.
I think those kind of people who have got that kind of position, they've got to be very linear in how they approach problems. I've heard a lot of people talk about how difficult he's to work with, but that doesn't necessarily mean he's a bad person.
Just like Steve Jobs.
But like I said, we only judge him on what we see through the media and very short kind of bits of his kind of interactions with people.
Right.
I'm more driven by kind of results, and I think doing interesting things, it should be the main focus. But yeah, maybe where I'm becoming more altruistic, I'm not sure. I don't think we've changed much over the last 10,000 years, but that's certainly up for debate. I think there are a lot more billionaires, aren't there? So there's also a lot more people out there with a lot more money than the rest of everybody. So there is that kind of competing nature more so than ever, maybe.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. Elon's choice have been quite tricky. I do trust him that he made somewhat of a good choice with Twitter, although on the surface he didn't. It looks like he's wasting his time on a problem that he shouldn't be spending his time on. But he's really smart, just with SpaceX, Solar City, all these moves, they make a lot of sense. SpaceX to put satellites in there and have Starlink everywhere in the world. That's just a massive business. Plus, it's massive value to humanity, right? It's always been one of my theses that education is super important. And to get top educations, all you need to do is have Wi-Fi, right? So huge props on that one. And he always thinks like 2, 3 steps, like a chess grandmaster. Me, if I can allow myself to make another prediction, that one would be more bleak. But I do think that the most virtuous humans, and I mean, that's quite controversial to say, but let's say that it's top echelon of society. Not 100% of it, but like, let's say that billionaires that made it to enlightenment, that they're not at the point of helping humanity, right? Like Elon and Altman. I do believe them that they really want to help humanity. I do think that these people are gonna separate themselves in some kind of better planet or something through interspace colonization. And I do think that the lower strat, the trolls, the haters, and all of these people that are kind of rotting from the inside, I think they're going to be left somewhere. And I do think they're going to auto-destruct themselves bit by bit with like AIs and so forth. Very bleak future, but yeah, what do you think about that one?
I think a lot will have to change over the future with AI. I think a lot of people are talking about the kind of reality of people losing jobs and people could be coming out of work. I don't think that's the kind of reality. I did hear an interesting kind of point of view, which was, you ever heard of the thesis Digital Athens?
Nope.
That was all, it's all based on, I can't remember who made this kind of comparison, but it's interesting kind of concept where the Athenians lived a really high level of livelihood purely because they had a big abundance of slaves. If you replace the slaves with autonomous AI systems, you then raise the quality of life. That would mean systems like universal basic income would have to come in. All I'm saying is, you're right. Like, things have to change a lot as I kind of progress through time changes, and we're changing a lot faster than we ever have done. So I do think we struggle to keep up with things. And you mentioned trolls and all those kind of people. Bear in mind, society is getting more divided in terms of politically, isn't it? So all those kind of things come together in different ways, and it's going to be interesting how things eventually merge into a future. It's difficult, and I do see the world being more separated than ever before. But unfortunately, this needs unity in a lot of ways to come up with right decisions about the next kind of 15, 20, 30, 40 years.
Right. And it's interesting because history, sometimes it's tough to transport ourselves, like with this woke age nowadays. Oh, slavery was this, slavery was that. But back in these days, slavery was very much normal. And a bunch of these folks thought of themselves as virtuous people for kind of saving the slavery from a worse life, and I mean, do whatever you want about what I just said. There's pros and cons to that, like in everything. But with the reality you just described, I can see that the lower strata of society kind of going on VR and this artificial world, right? And not being part of the broader conversation and kind of being left out and forever being hooked on serotonin, and that would be a species in itself, like a serotonin driven brain that's is forever stuck in a feedback loop. While at the higher stratas, they would be more thinking, they would be likely to have less serotonins. And then we haven't talked about BCIs and all of that. But yeah, this could be a poison pill, this UBI thing, it could be like, oh, you'll be comfortable forever. Well, this is not in our nature. And me, the most fascinating thing to me is studying human nature and it's like if Mother Nature was this all-powerful being driving everything, and if it was vastly superior to any technology out there and was bringing us in one direction, which is really hard to get away from, just not only in us, but just like in the laws of physics. So I guess we can leave it to this parenthesis for the audience. It was a cool conversation. I certainly grew a couple of neurons in the process. James, where can people find out more about you?
You can go to the website proai.co.uk, and yeah, you can hit me up on my LinkedIn or get in touch however. But yeah, it's a very interesting conversation. I think it's multivariate and no one's got the right answer, so it's worth debating a lot at this kind of time.
Right.
But I would say, like, something I involve in every day is trying to get the non-dangerous kind of technology, useful kind of technology in people's hands, because I really do see a big benefit in it. I'm from this conversation, I'm sure you do as well.
Right. The point is always conversing about things, not like, hey, my point is the right one. It's just like growing neurons in the process, and just like a neural net.